I'm back up here with Kimberly Twombly-Wu. She's one of the board members of Inforum, and I'm pretty sure friends with at least half of you here tonight. Definitely those ladies. So the video that you just saw gives you a little bit of taste of what Inforum is. To me, it's everything that's cultured and curious and brave and vocal about the Bay Area, but it's not just about the people in the video. It's also about this moment and the people in this room. At the beginning of the video, you saw Dan Savage say when he's a kid, he's standing in line, he realizes he's gay, and he sees these two men in front of him and realizes that he's gonna be okay. And as he's telling that story, he starts to cry, and then we start to cry, and then all 1,400 people at the Castro Theater start to cry. And I love listening to our programs on the radio, but this moment that we share together and hear 1,200, 1,300 women, the moments that we're gonna share with these speakers, it's the best part. It's the best part that I love about Inforum, and it's one of the best things that I love about San Francisco, so thank you for joining us for that.
So that story is great. That video is amazing. And I was sitting in that seat over there a couple of months ago with my husband, and I was like, I gotta do more. Like, I wanna be part of this community. And so I joined the board. And I'm thrilled to be part of the board of Inforum. But I realize we all can't join the board, and we can't put on events like Speakers with Judy Blume and Molly Ringwald without the support of our sponsors and our members and you all. And so there is a way you can give, and we're gonna show you how to do that. So you can text 4144, extra four, sorry, text 41444 to Inforum, space, your dollar amount, space, and your name. And we thought, how amazing if we had over 1,000 women in the room, and if we all gave $5, we could raise $5,000. And that would be a huge impact to keep the conversation going. So since I'm not as tech savvy as a lot of you probably are in the room, I'm gonna repeat my steps. You text 41444 to Inforum. You enter your amount, space, you enter your name, space, and that goes a long way because the only, woo, we got two. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And what I didn't realize is only 20% of our ticket costs cover the expenses. So we really appreciate all your support.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I get the great pleasure of introducing two amazing women, Molly Ringwald and Judy Blume. Like you, I grew up with these women. Their books and movies covered some pretty awfully awkward periods in our lives. Whether it was that first kiss, that first crush, that first bra, God, training bras are awful, or our first period. And I bet you in the sequel, Margaret would thank God for tampons. So they took us through these journeys and these transitional periods in life, and they made us feel normal. And through us feeling normal, we grew with confidence. And with that confidence, we could love ourselves for who we are, women. And so, as Catherine says to Michael Wagner, Molly and Judy, we love you. Forever you may ask, and forever we say. Thank you.
Well, we love you back.
Yes, well, we love you.
Well, I wrote a little bit of something. I'm a little bit nervous. I sent this introduction to my husband, who is a writer and an editor, and I always send everything to him before I publish it. And I FaceTimed with him earlier, and I said, "What do you think? What are your thoughts on what I wrote?" And he was kind of laughing and smiling and smirking at me. And I said, "What does that mean? Is it awful? What, you know?" And he said, "I can't believe you. I can't believe how nervous you are." And I was like, "This is Judy Blume. This is important to me." And he said everything was okay. He actually didn't change a lot. So I'm just gonna read it to you. Wow, I wish I would have printed this a little bigger, but here we go. Luckily, Judy gave me a Kleenex because I didn't think about that.
I have two
before.
more.
Thank you. I was asked to keep my introduction short, and I'll do my best. But how do you not gush a bit about someone that you have loved and admired for most of your life? In my case, about 36 years. The first book I read of Judy's was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Which was my gateway to the treasure trove of the Blume canon. Because of Margaret, I wasn't scared of getting my period or developing breasts. I practiced water ballet in my Southern California swimming pool, like Sally did in Florida. Blubber made me more compassionate. Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing and its breakout star Fudge made me howl with laughter. My parents and siblings clocked a lot of hours listening to me read choice bits out loud in the car while driving my father to work. And that's the other thing. There are certain works that you enjoyed as a kid or even as a young adult in your 20s, and then you revisit later in life and cringe. How could I ever think that was any good? Which just kind of makes you doubt everything. I thought this was who I was. I thought I understood. Well, I can safely say I've never had this experience with Judy Blume books. Rereading them now with my own daughter Matilda has been every bit the revelation it was the first time around. Fudge is still funny, genuinely funny. Karen dealing with her parents' divorce, and it's not the end of the world, made me understand back then what was going on with so many of my friends' parents growing up. And now I can see that empathy flush through my daughter. It's also made her a lot more forgiving of date night. I've been reading this one to her at night, and when I finish, she begs, "One more, just one more," and inevitably I give in and read one chapter more. The last time I finished and refused to give in, she tried a new and novel threat. "You better read one more, because if you don't, I'm going to read it all by myself." Smart kid. I read one more. And I can't think of a better compliment to pay to an author for kids. But of course, Judy is more than that. She has successfully written for every generation from nursery school on. When I was 10, she scandalized the world, and especially my own mother, by writing Wifey. Her first novel for adults. Wifey chronicled the sexual escapades and angst of a young, dissatisfied housewife in the suburbs. I remember overhearing a lot of shocked, "Can you believe?" comments from the mothers, but I also remember that they all had their own dog-eared copy. In my eyes, it just made her even more badass. I could go on, but she has been incredibly prolific, and if I talk about each and every book, we would never get to the conversation. And of course, we are all here because just a few days ago, Judy Blume published her first adult novel in 16 years. Which is truly something to celebrate. I was fortunate enough to read a galley a couple of months ago. I tore through it in a couple of days, all 401 pages. We might use the term binge watching today, but Judy Blume, for me, will forever define the experience of binge reading. An Unlikely Event is an epic, multi-character historical novel, mostly set in New Jersey, which is Blume's birthplace. 3 actual airplane disasters that occurred in the 1950s are the through line that she uses to connect the characters. Among the many themes the book explores is first love, friendship, family, tradition, madness, loss, and resilience. And here to talk about it, and anything else she so chooses to talk about, is my longtime personal heroine, Judy Blume.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, guys. I think we should stop right there. It can't get any better. Thank you, Molly.
Thank
you.
you.
It's funny. One thing that you said strikes me as funny, so I have to tell you. Because my husband said, people will say this is an historical novel. And I said, what are you talking about? It's just a few years ago in my lifetime. This is not an historical novel. And then he counts the years and says, how many years ago was 1952?
Yeah.
And it's like, really? It was that many years ago?
Yeah.
Because it feels to me like yesterday.
Of course.
That-
Well, vintage clothing stores now carry 80s clothing.
And I'm pretty in pink.
Which I just feel like I'm not quite ready for. But yes, it is a historical novel, but I also think that it's incredibly relevant. All the themes that you're dealing with are relevant to what's going on today.
Because to me, writing it, I felt that it was very immediate, and I was right there with them. I don't think of them back then. I feel like it just happened.
So a lot of this book was written through research. I think I read that it was researched more heavily than your other books.
Oh, it had to be. Yeah. I mean, 5 years working on it.
5 years?
5 years.
Is that the
working on
longest
it.
that you've spent writing your books?
Yes. Yes. Well, 5 months of research. Because although I remembered a lot, I didn't know anything really about the crashes. And I got so many characters and so many moments and so many scenes from the research, because there was no television news then.
Right.
You didn't come home from school and put on the TV set and watch this. It was all up to the newspapermen who painted the picture for us, and the photographers. Although I have to say, I don't think I read the papers when I was 14. I really don't.
Right.
But it's amazing to me to think now that this story, which I never forgot, was somewhere inside me for the 40-something years that I've been writing, and it never once occurred to me to tell this story.
And what made you decide that now was the time to tell this particular story?
I got hit over the head, like boing, when someone on stage was talking about the 50s, and I didn't hear another word but the 50s. And it was like, oh my God, I have a story that I have to tell. I have this story that I know so well. How could I never have thought to tell it? And how strange that, my own daughter became an airline pilot, a commercial airline pilot. And she's a reader, and she read an early draft of this book, and she said, Mother, how could you never have told me this story?
Wow.
I never told anyone this story.
And why do you think that was?
I don't know. Doctor, why have I never told anyone this story? I just think that, I don't know. It just must have been so deeply buried.
So when I read the book, I felt like, even though the airline crashes, this is not to make anybody nervous about
It's
flying,
not,
because
no.
this is the early days of
Very.
aviation, and they were still figuring things out. But I really didn't. But I feel like the book is really not about the crashes. It's really about these people and this town and this place and this time.
It is. It's about a time and a place, Elizabeth, New Jersey, winter of 1951-52, and about all of these characters, 3 families. It all came to me in a flash, something that's never, ever happened to me. With all the books, never happened this way. And that happened over a weekend. Monday morning, I started the research, and I couldn't wait to get up every day to get into this. I mean, I didn't know it would go so long.
Before
Yes.
I just have to ask you to take your right earring off because it's bumping the microphone.
Uh-oh. Is this one?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Sorry about
As beautiful as it is, now
that.
you're going to have your Michael Jackson moment. Or no, that's the glove. So after you did all of this research, how long did it take you to actually start writing the book?
Well, the research was great fun, and all of my
Yeah.
friends, including my husband who write nonfiction, said, yeah, we know the research is the great part.
Oh, I could do that all day.
Right,
I
you never
love,
want to
like,
stop
yeah.
doing the research,
Yeah.
but eventually you have to sit down and you have to write the book.
And how did you know when it was time? Did you just, I mean, what is your process of writing? And was it, well, should I say, like, did it change for this book? Has it always been the same?
I think it's always been pretty much the same, and it didn't really change for this book. And I always have a security notebook before I start, which is just me jotting things down about some character who's in my head. But in this case, I had a real security notebook with, stories from 2 now defunct newspapers, but that covered this widely. And I used and wanted to use all of those newspaper stories to help tell this. Because a little secret about me is I can't write descriptive prose.
Why is that?
I can't. I never write descriptive prose. I'm good at characters and dialogue. I mean, if I'm good at anything. And
I'll say.
and stories, but I don't write descriptive prose. And thanks to these news reports, I was able to allow my characters to describe the situations.
Yeah.
as
Well,
they
I've
happen.
never felt with your books, this one included, that it was ever lacking in any descriptive prose. I felt like they were always, I knew the time, I knew the place. I've always felt instantly transported, which I think, I mean, yeah, okay.
But in this book, there had to be descriptive prose. Because how else are you going to describe, what happens and what certain characters see and feel? You needed to have it. I needed to have it.
Yeah.
And there was language of the 50s that you won't find in the New York Times today.
Right.
You won't find a plane coming down like an angry, wounded bird. That's a quote. Or a plane that breaks apart like a swollen cream puff.
I love that.
That is from the real stories. And those stories helped me and gave me a notebook this thick, so I was never alone. And I mean, there's such great characters came out of it. I mean,
And how did you come up with the characters? Are these people that you knew, that you grew up with? Are they entirely invented? Are they a combination of both?
okay, the families, the characters, they're all fictional characters, except for the people on the plains. And with one exception, who is Estelle Sapphire, all of the people on the plains were inspired by real people on those plains.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And
have-
everybody else, everybody who's telling the story is fictional. One person. There's always one thing, My father was a dentist, and I adored my father, and he was much beloved in our town. And the character of Dr. O, a dental hero, I always have dental heroes. A dental hero is inspired by my father. And my early editor, Dick Jackson, my first editor of all the books that you all grew up on, said to me, Judy, someday a graduate student is going to do her or his thesis on teeth in Judy Blume book.
Well, you have beautiful teeth,
But
I
they're
have to
not,
say.
But
He did a
didn't
great job.
But he didn't. I never
Well,
had
genetically.
I don't know. I was lucky.
Did any of the people any relatives of the people that died in those crashes, have any of them, I mean, I know that the book just came out, I think less than a week ago, but have any of them contacted you? Have you spoken to any of those people?
Many, long before, I mean, they can't have read the book, but when the book was announced, I began to hear from people all over who had connections to this. And when I'm in Austin, I'm actually going to meet a woman whose father was one of the journalists who reported widely on it. She wrote a letter, and she said, well, I'm just curious, did you ever come across someone named Melville Shapiro who, covered these stories? And I'm like, Mel Shapiro? It's like he's my friend. These people, these journalists that I lived with for all these years. Yes, of course. And so when I'm in Austin, I'm going to meet her. And I met a lot of people in Elizabeth, New Jersey a few nights ago.
Do you ever go back to Elizabeth, New Jersey? I mean, do you still feel a strong connection to, like, when did you leave?
When we moved when I was 19. I lived in one house from age 2 to age 19, and then we left. And to tell you the truth, for years and years and years, when people said, where are you from? I fudged it because I always wanted to be from the other side of the river. I wanted to be from the big city. But recently, as I've grown older, I've come to say I'm a Jersey girl and I'm a Jersey tomato. They gave me a T-shirt once that said Jersey tomato, and I wear it proudly.
So that's lovely.
My mother lived in Elizabeth until she died. My parents were born and raised in Elizabeth, so we had a long history.
Did you ever come across Philip Roth?
Interesting you should say that.
Tell me.
Now, okay. His mother and my mother went to high school together.
Really?
Yes, I've never met him.
Oh, really? You've never met? Wow.
No, but
that needs to happen.
Here's the thing. How come Philip Roth from the Weequahic section of Newark, right near the airport, right near Elizabeth, never wrote this story? And I'm so grateful to him that he didn't. Because it would have been such a good book. I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah.
It would have been such a good book. And the only thing I can think of is he was, that many years older than me. He must have been away at college when it happened.
Yeah,
And,
maybe. I don't know where he went to college. And now he's done writing, apparently.
Well, good for him. I read that and I thought, yes. Good for you.
And how do you feel? Do you feel like this is your last big book? Do you feel like you want to continue? What is your feeling about, like, how do you feel about writing? Do you feel like, are you one of these writers that has to write, that it feels compelled to write, or is it something that I write. I've written one novel.
By the way, let me tell you, I read it on the plane here. I'm up to Oliver and Olivia. And this is a wonderful book. It was like, wow, this girl can write.
Thank you.
So I'm looking forward to more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Am I compelled to write? Do I have to take the other earring off?
The other earring, yeah.
Yes?
Sorry.
Yes? Is
Yes.
it? Oh,
Yes.
my God. What am I going to have to take off next? I think this about writing. Writing changed my life. Writing gave me everything. I think you don't write if you don't have to. I think there's that something in there. It's the creative energy. With me, I think it could have gone any way. writing or whatever else. But, you know, it was...
Did you ever do anything else? Did you ever act or dance or do...
no, but I want to.
Oh, I heard you're tap dancing now.
I do. I like to tap. I like to dance.
Have
yeah,
you always
yeah.
loved musicals
Always.
and Fred Astaire and
Always.
Gene
Always.
Kelly and
Yes. I have one fantasy left.
which is
A musical theater.
oh,
Sally J. Friedman on the stage.
Matilda's looking at me like, yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Recently, Matilda's gotten into musical theater, which is so exciting when your child stops listening to Katy Perry. Nothing against Katy Perry. I think Katy Perry is amazing, and Lady Gaga, and Madonna, and Iggy Azalea, and of course Taylor Swift, and all the rest. But when your daughter would rather listen to Rent, A New Brain by William Finn, Oscar and Hammerstein, Chorus Line. We just started listening to Chorus Line.
I'm the one who wants to play, I want to sing Tits and Ass.
I was looking through the song list when we first started to listen to it, and I was, where's that song? Where's that song? And they call it Dance 10 Looks 3.
Oh, right. I'm so sorry. I want to do Dance 10 Looks 3.
I wanted to ask you, your novels and your books, for all of your books, are incredibly full of honesty and candor about the body, and an incredible lack of shame, which I think is remarkable and really hard to find. Wifey really did scandalize my mother, and still does to this day. But also, forever, or talking about the menstrual cycle, or erections, or all of these things that we are not supposed to talk about, or we're supposed to be ashamed about. You talked about with such humor and grace, and and I really do feel like you've been a guide for me, and I think for all of us. Yeah. And I just want to know, how did you do that? Because it's something that I struggle with. How do you present yourself? I mean, I have that acting thing on top of it, which you haven't had to deal with. But you have this image, and you want to be sort of a certain way, and also you have your family, who I presume has been reading your books all this time. How did you overcome that barrier, or did you even feel that?
I actually never felt it while I was writing.
Never.
I must be some other person when I go into that little room to write. I don't know. I was lucky. I had friends. We talked about it. Mm-hmm. We didn't know anything. Nobody told us anything. Mm-hmm. My friend Rosie had a book, and we all...
That's sort of average.
I was 14. My daughter and her friend asked their Ouija board, when were they going to get their periods?
And what did the Ouija board say?
The Ouija board said, I don't know.
Don't worry about it.
The Ouija board said 14.
Yeah. Well, I do think that it's been an incredible comfort. Your books have been an incredible comfort for me, because it's scary. It's scary when your body changes, when everything changes. I think that there are periods of life, and you've managed to, I think, cover just about all of them, because you've written books for very young readers, and then grammar school or elementary school, middle school. You've pretty much covered every generation, I think.
So let me just tell you that for all of the women who ask me to write a book about Margaret in menopause.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But, and this is not a spoiler, so I can tell you on the first page or in the first 2 pages of In the Unlikely Event, Miri, who is the major protagonist, she does get a hot flash.
That's really great. So I didn't write any questions down because I was afraid that I was going to, be like this the whole time. But
we're having fun.
But we're having fun. Are you having fun? So what's next after? I mean, you're going to be on book tour for a little bit.
Yes, until July 20-something or other. And if I survive, then I'm going to take a break.
Yeah, I think you deserve it.
Yeah. After Summer Sisters, I said to George, my husband, wherever he is, I'm never doing this again, ever.
The book tour or the writing
No,
of
the
book?
writing. The writing. I'm never doing this again. It was 3 years of torture, Aglady, if you don't do this anymore. And then, I didn't do any writing for a couple of years, maybe. And then I wanted to write for young children. And so I wrote a series of 4 books based on The Pain and the Great One for little children. And then I said, good. And then I got hit over the head. So it's like I can't say what's going to happen. I mean, years and years ago, I knew if you asked me what's next, there would be another book and another book and another book, because I couldn't not do it. It was there, and it came out, and it took me from being sick in my 20s to being healthy and alive and anxious to get up every day. And but then, then I met George, and I got a little happier, and I didn't have to do it so much.
Do you find that you write more when you're happy, or you write more when you're unhappy?
Well, I would say in the beginning, angst is very good.
Yeah,
for the
propels
writer.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, having a lot of angst. Now it doesn't have anything to do with happy or not happy.
You just have a writing habit.
It has to do, but I don't have to write.
Yeah.
I don't have to write. I can be happy without writing, I think. Not happy without a creative project, because the creative juices keep going, and eventually they have to come out in some way, and so you have to do something, right?
I was just
Matilda.
I was telling my friend Meredith last night that I feel like writers or any artist we have to find some avenue, some way to get it out.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you just go crazy.
Yes, and I would have.
Yeah.
And as it was, in my 20s, I was sick all the time, exotic illnesses. And
Like like Sandy.
Yes,
in
like
Wifey.
Sandy and Wifey, yes, exactly.
And do you
yes.
think that they were related to your dissatisfaction, your frustration? I mean, once you found that creative outlet and that success, did those illnesses go away?
They did. They went away before success. They went away when I was writing.
Yeah.
They went away because there was a way, to let all that stuff out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm much older now, and I realize that I don't want to spend 5 years on one project, unless, of course, it was a musical of Sally Friedman.
Can you picture any of your books being a musical?
Sally Friedman.
Oh, Sally Friedman.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sally
yes.
Friedman, the musical.
But there would have to be a big swimming
Swimming
pool or
pool?
something in the middle. There would have to be, the Esther Williams moment. Yeah. Have you ever pursued that, or have spoken to any composers or about that?
I actually am talking to somebody about it, but I don't know if it will happen. It's just fun to think about.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Okay, guys. No, let's do it.
Matilda
Movies
keeps
are
giving
fun.
me a
You know, I was
message.
on this stage 3 years ago now, probably this month, maybe it was May, I mean, with Tiger Eyes. We introduced that little indie movie in this gorgeous theater.
Which your son directed.
He did, and we
right?
wrote it together. It was a very exciting experience.
What was that like working with your child? Well, I mean,
Well,
he's a
he's a grown
man,
son.
but
Right, right.
I think I'm always going to call
this
my
is,
children.
This is what I
children.
think. I think that we did it once when he was 25 and I was 50, and we weren't ready. and
And what was that? What project?
Oh, it's a little Sheila the Great movie. And this time, I think we were both mature enough to understand that if we were going to work together, we were really going to have a good time doing it. It was going to work. We were going to make it work. And we did. And even though I had to leave the book that I was writing in The Unlikely Event, which is a terrible thing to do, for 2 years.
2 years you
Well,
left the.
I think so. Maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't. I might have made that up. It might have been less than that. But, you know, from screenplay to finish to taking the movie around, it was a long time. And it was a great creative experience.
Did you feel the need to control the? I mean, I would imagine I've never had anything that I've written adapted, but what was that experience? I mean,
You know who's in charge, the director,
Yeah.
not the writer.
Yeah.
Especially not the writer of the original material, which I was once called in a very unhappy situation.
yeah. What was that? What situation was that?
No, we don't have
won't
time
talk
to
about
go
that.
there. No, no. But I mean, Larry was the director, and he was very generous, and he had me on my little seat in front of the monitor all the time, and it was just a good experience, and one that, you would never want to have missed
Yeah.
if you had the chance to
Yeah.
do it. So I'm thrilled that I did it, and I'm thrilled that I finally finished this book.
This book, which does everyone have their copy of this book?
It's an emotional book, but I think ultimately, even though there's a lot of tragedy in it, it's leaves you with the feeling that life goes on and there is hope and
Joy.
joy.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And
really
love.
what I got from that, was that there was just this incredible sense of love and connection. I mean, like all of your books, I feel like it's given all of us this sense of connection, that we can talk about things that we weren't supposed to talk about, or that we can, I don't know.
That's good, Molly.
Right? I'll just leave it there.
that.
I'll just leave
You're
it there.
so great. You're wonderful.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about you blogged about having breast cancer,
Oh, yeah.
and which I thought was lovely. And once again, you were talking about something that is hard and difficult to talk about. And I wonder if that is something that you are going to write about or put in your novels, or if you have any plans to, or if that was just kind of it.
No, that was just kind of it. I mean, I blogged about it because, well, first of all, I was very lucky. So it's not, there's a lot of different kinds of breast cancer. And mine came at age 74. And it was small and it was early. But I did have to make a lot of decisions. And the reason that I wrote that blog was to let people know that, I mean, that's the tough part. You talk to everybody, and even doctors will tell you, well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? How are you going to take care of this? And so that's hard. And I just took care of it, And you were
lucky.
And I was lucky, yeah.
And we are lucky
Yeah,
because you
and
were
I
lucky.
didn't need any, real treatment. I had surgery, and that was it. I don't even think about it most of the time.
Wow. Okay, I know that we have about 3 minutes before we are going to go to the audience's questions. Have you all written down your questions yet, or are you going to? I think you're going to do that. I wanted to ask you one thing that I am curious about is, I have an 11-year-old daughter and 5-year-old twins, and and of course, my 11-year-old is reading your books now, but I wonder how things would be different if you had written your books in a digital age.
I'm so glad I didn't have to do that. I don't know. I have a lot of younger writer friends who write today. I think a lot of that gets in the way of your story. You know, you want to tell a story, and you don't necessarily want it to be about electronics. So I don't know. I might just leave it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the great pleasure of writing about 1952.
Yeah.
You know, you put your Angora sweater in the refrigerator, and you dance with your boyfriend to Nat King Cole, and you talked on the telephone. But
Yeah.
Communication was so different.
Yeah.
So different.
Very different. I mean, people ask me the same question about the Breakfast Club, and they say, what would it be like if that was done today? And I think that there's no way they could remake this movie today, realistically, because if they did, it would be like this.
Yeah. Right.
Which is not very interesting.
No, it's not. It's really not. And what I find is that if you see a movie, a contemporary movie, and that uses a lot of electronic devices, it's very specific, but not every contemporary movie does. You might see a cell phone, but you don't have a lot of people walking around texting.
No, it's true. I think right now the filmmakers are figuring out ways to get around it. Because it's one of those things where you can't ignore it, because it is definitely, it's here to stay, and it's changing the way that we make films. It's changing the way that we tell stories. So we have to acknowledge it in some way, but figure out a way to make it interesting and
still about people.
And still about people, because all of the feelings are the same.
They are.
That never changes. Well, I would like to say thank you.
Oh, I would like to say thank you. And thank you to all of you. She's great. I think you need to come with me.
Oh, thank you. I wish I could. So it is now an informed tradition to ask all of our speakers the following question. Sorry, I got to do this.
Are we going to a desert island?
No.
Oh, good.
Well, we can, but this is your. I have to ask you what your 60-second idea is to change the world.
Oh, that's an easy question.
Yeah, no pressure there.
Be kind to each other.
I like that. Actually, I went ahead. I was supposed to introduce the audience questions first, so I might come back after and ask you your other 60-second idea to change the world. Sorry, but that was a really good one. You can say it again if you want. Okay, now we're going to do the audience Q&A.
Hi, guys. So as you notice, you're lining up on that far aisle, right there at the end, and then we'll come through and get you guys up to the microphone one at a time. Reminder that your questions are questions and that they're one part. Also, if you're going to tweet or Facebook about it, the hashtag is Molly and Judy taught me. So we'll go ahead and take the first question.
I love that hashtag.
Thank you again for coming. This is a question for both of you. Do you think the internet and social media makes it easier to be a young woman in this world right now?
No, I don't think it does at all.
Probably makes it harder.
I think it makes it exponentially harder.
Everything is out there. Everything is there. You know, this is the first book that I've written since, really, I mean, Summer Sisters, we didn't have the kind of social media. And now everything is there. Everything I say, things I don't want people to know, but I said them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been,
there.
I've been in the public eye. I did my first professional job when I was 10 years old, which was Annie. Just aged myself. First West Coast production of Annie here in San Francisco at the Curran Theater, and then the Schubert Theater in. I can teach you my dance routines backstage if you want. I still remember them. I was in the chorus, but so and then after that I went into television, and then of course the John Hughes movies. So I've been in the public eye for a really long time and very protective of myself. And that's really because of my parent. My mother always said, which is not the greatest thing for a writer, but I think it's good, very protective for a public person. Never put anything in writing that you wouldn't want to see on the cover of the New York Times.
Oh, I know that one.
Right?
I know that one, right.
You know,
I forgot to tell that to my kids.
Yeah, and and I say that all the time to my daughter, because it's and I didn't grow up with the internet. I mean, I got the internet when I was in my early 20s. I'm not a digital native, and I feel like it's so hard to impress upon my children the importance of the privacy. Mm-hmm. That that's something that we have always had, for the most part, in our country, that we're dangerously in danger of losing now. And I think that it's really important that we don't support our own loss of privacy, because people are already trying to do it for us. So
That's true.
Hi. So you both have portrayed iconic roles of adolescence, and I'm wondering if you can each share a story of, as mothers, if there's been a moment when you've drawn upon those iconic portrayals in your own parenting.
What I write is pretty separate from where I was as a parent, I think. I mean, yeah, I wanted to be honest and truthful with my kids the way I wanted to be honest and truthful in my books. But, it's one thing for all of you to think I was the greatest parent in the world, but really, I was just a parent floundering like every other parent, and not always knowing how to deal with the situations. I'm not sure that answers your question, but
I think I won't say I reread Wifey, because I never read it as a kid.
You really like that book.
I just read it. I mean, it's really fresh in my mind. But I remember it really was a big deal when I was 10 years old, because you were I took ownership of you.
You weren't supposed to read it when you were 10.
Well, I didn't. That's what I want to say. I didn't read it. Everyone was scandalized by it, because they said, how can this famous kids writer write this book? But the truth was I of course I went with my friends and opened it up, but it didn't speak to me.
Right.
So I closed it up. I mean, the other day I was with Matilda and her friend, and her 10-year-old school friend didn't recognize me from the Breakfast Club, and he said that he started watching it and he thought it was boring, so he stopped. And Matilda asked me later, did that offend you? Were you offended? And I said, no, of course not. It didn't speak to him. So when he's 16 years old, like a lot of 16-year-olds, I think it will speak to him. Or not, I don't know, it's okay to me. But anyway, what I was going to say was that what I thought was really wonderful was how your mother is portrayed in that book, because she clearly has love for her children, but there are moments where she can't deal with them, or
Wait,
she doesn't
which
know what to
mother?
do.
Where
the
are
mother
we?
in your book, the mother that you were portraying,
In
Wifey,
Wifey.
which I just finished.
Mother.
Sandy.
Sandy's mother?
No, Sandy. She's
Oh,
a mother.
Sandy, she is a mother.
Yeah.
But you know, I sent the kids away for the summer so she could have all her fantasies.
Yeah, but she still
She was a mother.
gets the letters
Yes,
from
she
her
does.
kids from camp.
She does. That was a letter my daughter wrote me from camp. There is no steak, there is no roast beef. This is the day when we were meat eaters, right? I haven't eaten meat in 35 years. Only 2 cookies a day, I am all bones.
Oh.
She wrote me that from camp. And oh my God, my heart broke.
Your heart. How
My
could you
heart
stand it?
Oh, hi. I love you both. I just wanted to say, Judy, when it comes to the brave and pioneering way you wrote about sexuality and other controversial topics in your young adults books, what's a question you never get asked but wish you did get asked? Or what's a story you never get to tell but wish you could tell about that?
Eek. I don't think I can answer that. I would have to think long and hard about that. I don't have a quick answer for you. I'm sorry. I don't know. No,
I don't
no,
have anything
no.
either.
Help! No,
I
okay.
wish I could help
Sorry.
you out.
I'll ask something possibly along the same lines, maybe a little easier to answer. Forever, which I had out of the library for longer than I care to admit, is a really honest, frank, very open look at teenage sexuality. And it came out in an age when most young adult books, I think, wouldn't touch that. So I'm wondering if you got any pushback from your publisher or your editor about putting that kind of openness out there, and if so, how you advocated for the importance of it.
Okay, first I have to tell you, there was no such category as YA books, right? I mean, when I started to write, everybody thinks I write YA books. I never wrote YA books until, Forever would have been published YA, but there was no category called YA. And so all the books that, you're talking about today, Margaret and Sally and all of those, they were what we call today middle grade, books. Right. They were kids' books. They were books for kids. And then I wrote Forever, and my publishers, it was a very open, free time. The 70s were a great time for writers and readers. Yes, I know, for a lot of stuff. Hey, I met my husband at the end of the 70s, the tail end of the 70s, and he moved in 2 days later, and that was 35 years ago.
Wow.
So, okay, so the 70s were different. And, but the publishers were willing to take chances. A lot of us came of age at the same time. Norma Klein and Norma Fox Mazer and Richard Peck, and probably a lot of the writers that you all grew up with. But when I wrote Forever, and I wrote it for the worst reason in the world, you never write a book because somebody asks you to. But my daughter, who was 14 and was reading a lot of books in which if a girl succumbs to this thing, something terrible will happen. She will die. She will be sent away forever.
Yeah.
Boys never had any feelings, and I had a son, and girls never had any interest in sex. But Randy asked me, Mother, could you write a book? Could there be a book in which 2 nice kids do it and nobody has to die? So
Thank you, Randy.
I wrote Forever, and it's dedicated to her.
Oh. Here's my own daughter, Matilda.
Oh, Matilda.
Have you ever stopped writing a book or stopped working on a creative project because you felt like you'd lost inspiration, or you just like, well, I've come this far, gotta keep going?
You know, that's a very, very good question. Since in the very early days before I was published, I wrote some really bad things, which are in the cupboard, and there's a big message on the box to my kids. If you publish these after my death, I will come back and haunt you. But once I really got started telling stories and being published, I don't think that I ever stopped. I don't think there was one that I gave up on. But that's probably because they run around in my head for a long time before I commit to writing about them. And there are tough moments when, you know, I think, this isn't working, what am I going to do? And that's when you go for a bike ride or a run, or you bounce a ball against the wall, or you do something. Take a shower. Very good ideas. Come in the shower. The entire idea for Super Fudge came to me while I was in the shower. So I'm very clean all the time. So I guess the answer is that no, I haven't found that, but I know a lot of people do, and that's okay. And what I tell kids is if it's not for school, and if it's not due, you know, just write. And if you get sick of it, just put it away. You know, it's okay. Start something new. The more you write, the more you learn. That's good.
And the better you get.
The better you get. Isn't there something like that?
I have a question for you. You know, a lot of people ask me, you know, they say that the movies that I've been in helped them through their adolescence. And what movies did I have that helped me? And it's kind of interesting because I'm one of the only teenagers in the 80s that really didn't have the Breakfast Club to guide me. Because your experience, of course, when you're in it is completely different. So I'm just curious, who was your Judy Blume?
Well, we didn't have YA books, or, you know, I finished reading children's books early, and by 12 and 13, I was in my parents' bookshelves in the house, and I will say, my parents, I've only thought of this recently, but I love it, so I'm going to say it. My parents gave me one of the greatest gifts, I think, of all, by making me feel that reading is a good thing, something to be celebrated. They were never afraid of what I was reading. Reading was good. And they liked to read, and so they were happy that I liked to read. And there was never a time when I was told, you know, you can't read that book. They weren't judgmental in what I was reading. So I was curious about the grown-up world, and I've, you know, satisfied a lot of my curiosity with those wonderful books.
American writers,
You
European
know,
writers, Russians?
John O'Hara, George Halp. Where's George? George, I can't do names. John O'Hara, who's the guy from Chicago? Saul Bellow.
Oh, Saul Bellow. Philip Roth.
No,
maybe?
no,
No,
Philip
not so
wasn't
much?
writing yet. No, not when I was young. No. Portnoy's Complaint came when I was grown up.
Oh,
We're
wow.
not that far apart in age. We're maybe 5 years apart. No. So, you know, just even Ayn Rand, God help us, was on my parents' bookshelves. But as far as I knew, these books were just really good stories. You know, I didn't get, when you're young,
Yeah.
you read over.
Yeah, of
You read
course.
over what you don't get, and I read it for the stories. So we had a book called 17th Summer. We loved 17th Summer. We all read it in junior high. And it was a very kind of true book. But other than that, I read adult books. I made up book reports in 6th grade because, I invented the books because I wasn't reading what I thought I was supposed to be reading. I wasn't going to give a book report on John O'Hara. So I invented, a title and an author and characters.
And did you get
And I
good
s-
grades? Were you
A.
ever A's? All right.
On those, but if I reported on something I really read, not necessarily an A.
Hi, thank you so much. And this is a question for Judy. I wanted to know how you remembered all of this. Like, you have such a great picture, and I remember when I was 12 reading Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, and it was so much, pretty much exactly what I was going through. And how did you as an adult remember what it was like to be young, to be able to write the book so vividly and accurately?
Well, of course, when I wrote that book, I was, I wasn't very old. And my childhood was right there. But even in this book, I can't explain memory and how it works. It's a gift, I guess. It's a gift to somebody like me who wants to write. I just have an incredible memory. My best friend from 7th grade, who is still my best friend, I can't even tell you how many years. George, how many years? 63 years of friendship.
Your friendship was a little bit of an inspiration for Summer Sisters, wasn't it?
Well,
The characters were different. It was fiction and much more. They were much more combative and.
I dedicated it to her,
Right.
but we were very different than that. But yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who knows where inspiration comes from? But anyway, why was I going to tell you about my friendship of all those years?
Oh, she was
because
asking about
because she
memory,
doesn't
how you-
remember
how you-
anything. She doesn't remember
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
She didn't even remember the crashes.
Wow.
I went to a lot of my old friends. I still know a lot of them. And each one had one vivid memory for me. And each of those memories wound up in the book as a moment, as a scene. In one case, a very important character, Mrs. Barnes, came from a friend of mine from the memory. So, I used to think that we're all kind of a certain age, when we see the world through that age, and that I would always be 12. But I've gotten a little older. So, but I can still remember. I can be 4. I can remember what it was like to be 4. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I find when I talk to my parents, I think my parents are probably around. How old are you now?
77.
Wow. Okay. You look good. My parents are 70. My father's 75, and my mother is 74.
Well.
And their memory, the memories that they share with me now, are so much more vivid than they were when I was growing up. I feel like they were just trying to keep their head above water when they were dealing with their children and all of that. And now the memories that my father shares with me about growing up and World War II. He was, I think, 4 years old when the war ended, and it's all so vivid and so up close. Of course, they can't remember where they left their keys.
Neither
or
can I.
The short-term memory
I.
sort of changes, but the long-term memory
Hey,
is
I never
there.
remembered where I left my keys.
Oh,
My
there you
mother
go.
once gave me a little red ball to put on the antenna. Remember when cars had antennas? And she gave me this red kind of styrofoam ball to put on the antenna so I could find my car when I came out of the supermarket, because I could never find it. So some things don't change.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. My question is for Judy. Nowadays, there's a lot of media attention, or access, I should say, to sex and whatnot through the Kardashians, the Real World, and 50 Shades of Grey. You were one of the first of your time, I feel like, with publishing books along these lines. What kind of backlash did you face, if any, with your publications back then?
You know, again, because it was a different time, I didn't get the backlash until 1980.
Really?
Well,
Interesting.
1980, everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything changed with the presidential election of 1980, and the censors then came out of the woodwork overnight, and they came waving books into schools and libraries, and if those schools and libraries weren't prepared with policies in place, frightened principals, teachers took the books off the shelves.
Your books are still being banned, aren't they?
Challenged. We call it challenged.
Not banned?
Not that I know of. I mean, I don't know about all of it. But I mean, we have so many things to help now. We have the National Coalition Against Censorship, which again changed my life when I, found them and began to work and speak out, because it always feels better to speak out and work and be determined, and not just for my stuff, but right now it's Sherman Alexie is being hit right and left with trying to ban his wonderful book, which is such a good book.
Toni Morrison is banned in some places. I mean, it's incredible.
And it's gone, I have to tell you. I mean, it's gone from where it started was the extreme religious right, but it's gone to the left with trigger warnings.
Yeah.
What is this? You're in college. Do you need trigger warnings?
Yeah.
You're in college. What are you going to do when you're out of college? And you've got to learn how to deal with it.
You have to learn, how to deal with being triggered.
Hi.
This is a question for Judy. What inspired you to write the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
I think because it was the first book where I really let go. I had written 2 books and published 2 books before it, but I call them learning experiences. And with Margaret, I said, I'm just going to let it rip. What I remembered about being that age, what I remembered very clearly from my own 6th grade experiences, and my relationship with God, which is very much true in Sally J. Friedman especially, and that had nothing to do with organized religion, but God was my confidant and friend, and someone I could speak to, and I just let it out, and it came out in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Because it was there, and it was ready to come out, and everything was new and spontaneous and exciting.
And when you wrote it, did you know as soon as and do you write longhand, of course?
No.
Oh, type.
Well, in those days, I had a typewriter.
You had a typewriter?
Yes, and carbon paper.
And when you finished, did you know that it was a hit?
Oh, no.
No idea?
No idea. I didn't know. I didn't know
How
if
could
anyone...
you not know?
I didn't know if
could you
anyone
not
would
know?
even publish it.
Wow.
I didn't know that I was a writer, that I was really a writer, until I read it in the New York Times. It was a review of Margaret, and it was in a roundup of 7 books, and I still remember, and I remember the feeling, the best book of the 7 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm really a writer. Maybe I can really do this. It was so exciting.
Well, I think the world says a resounding yes. And we're so grateful to you that you have done this.
Thank you, Molly.
I guess I will end by asking you once again, has your answer changed? It was a really good one. What is your 60-second, what is the question again? 60, the informed tradition is to ask all of our speakers the following question. What is your 60-second idea to change the world?
Well, I mean, I could say the same thing, or I could be really silly.
And what would you like to tap dance it out?
No, I do think, especially as I grow older, that being kind and thinking about the other person, I think I've become much more kind, and I would love everybody else to too, and eat pasta.
Thank you.
Are we getting up?
I'm gonna hug you. Sorry,
I'm gonna hug you back. Oh, you are wonderful.
This was like
I
a
love
dream
you.
come true.
Oh, I love her. And thank you for bringing her to me here. Thank you so much.